He has lost his fiancée to a jail cell. He has lost his farm to his ex-wife. Now, Matt Roloff is about to lose his sons forever. In a desperate last-ditch effort to salvage his public image, Matt called for a family meeting, expecting his boys to fall in line. He thought he could play the victim one last time. He was wrong. What he got instead was an intervention from hell, where years of silence and betrayal finally exploded. Zach came with receipts, but it was Jeremy's final, chilling ultimatum that sealed Matt's fate. This is the story of the meeting that broke the Roloff family for good. Before we unlock the doors to this private meeting and expose the devastating audio leaks and insider reports that have the network scrambling, I need you to hit that like button. We are exposing the truth that the production team is terrified to air. If you want us to keep digging into the Roloff files and bringing you the updates they don't want you to see, smash subscribe and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss what comes next. The context here is critical. According to multiple reports and theories circulating among insiders in Hillsboro, the walls have been closing in on Matt Roloff for months. The narrative we are hearing is that Caryn Chandler's sudden legal troubles, allegations of financial impropriety involving farm assets, have left Matt completely isolated. With Caryn currently in federal custody pending a hearing, the power couple of the farm has been shattered. But Matt, ever the strategist, saw a different kind of crisis. He didn't see a family emergency. He saw a PR nightmare. Sources suggest that Matt's biggest fear wasn't Caryn's jail time, but the collapse of his wholesome grandfather persona. If the public realized he was complicit in the alleged financial schemes, the Roloff brand would be toxic. He needed a shield. He needed a photo op. He needed Zach and Jeremy. The setup for this meeting was classic manipulation. Insiders claimed that Matt sent a mass text to both Zach and Jeremy on a Tuesday night. The message was short, calculated, and designed to pull at their heartstrings. It read, "We need to talk. For the grandkids. I can't do this alone anymore. Please." It was a masterclass in guilt tripping. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was implying that if they didn't show up, they were hurting their own children's heritage. The location chosen was a neutral one, a private room at a steakhouse in Hillsboro, away from the prying lenses of the TLC cameras. Matt knew that if this meeting happened on the farm, the boys wouldn't show. The farm is no longer neutral ground. It is a crime scene in their eyes. A restaurant offered the illusion of a peace treaty. But here is where Matt miscalculated. He assumed Zach and Jeremy were coming to listen. He assumed they were coming to be charmed, or at least to be guilted into a ceasefire. He was operating on the old software, back when he was the patriarch who controlled the purse strings in the narrative. He didn't realize that Zach and Jeremy had been talking. For the first time in years, the brothers were not rivals for the farm. They were allies in the truth. They agreed to the meeting not to help Matt, but to deliver a message. They arrived separately, but their mindset was synchronized. They weren't there to negotiate. They were there to prosecute. Witnesses at the restaurant described the atmosphere as frigid. Matt arrived 20 minutes early, reportedly looking disheveled, a stark contrast to his usual polished appearance. He secured the private back room and ordered a bottle of wine, setting the stage for a gentleman's agreement. When Zach walked in, he didn't even look at his father. He sat at the far end of the table. Jeremy arrived moments later, dressed in a sharp blazer, carrying a demeanor that was less son and more corporate liquidator. There were no hugs, there were no pleasantries. Matt tried to stand up to greet them, but Jeremy simply gestured for him to sit down. The power dynamic had shifted before a single word was spoken. Matt started the meeting with the strategy everyone expected. He went straight for the victim card. According to leaked details of the conversation, Matt opened with a trembling voice, saying, I know things have gotten out of hand. I know you're angry, but you have to understand, I've been under immense pressure. Caryn, she made some mistakes, but we can't let that destroy what I built. I built this for you. I built this for Jackson, for Ember, for all the grandkids. I need you boys to stand with me. We need to release a joint statement saying we support each other. If we don't, the internet is going to tear this family apart. He paused, waiting for the sympathy to kick in. He waited for Zach to stutter or for Jeremy to offer a philosophical quote about forgiveness. Instead, silence hung in the air for 10 uncomfortable seconds. Then Zach reached into his bag. He didn't pull out a phone or a notebook. He pulled out a thick, color-coded file folder. This wasn't something Zach had thrown together. This was a dossier, and the man who helped compile it, none other than Chris Marek. That's right. The theory is that Chris, with his background in real estate and his access to the farm's inner workings via Amy, had been quietly tracking the paper trail for months. Zach slammed the folder onto the table. The sound echoed in the quiet room, causing Matt to flinch. Zach spoke first, and his voice wasn't the soft, hesitant tone we're used to seeing on the show. It was sharp, clear, and furious. He cut right through Matt's opening monologue. Out of hand? Dad, you think this is getting out of hand? You think this is a misunderstanding? This isn't a family squabble. This is a crime scene. And you're not the victim. You're the accomplice. Matt tried to interrupt. Now, Zach, hold on. You don't know the whole story? I know the story, Zach shouted, pointing a finger at the folder. I have the story right here. Chris found it. Mom knows. Everyone knows. We're done pretending, Dad. We're done playing the game where you pretend to be the confused old man while Caryn robs the inheritance blind. Zach opened the folder. The first document he slid across the table was a copy of a property deed. But it wasn't for the big house. It was a deed related to a parcel of land adjacent to the farm, a deal that had gone through quietly 2 years ago. Zach pointed to the signature line. Look at that, Dad. Look at the date. That's Mom's signature. Except Mom was in Michigan that weekend visiting family. We checked her flight records. She didn't sign this. You forged her signature to move assets into that shell company in Nevada before the divorce settlement was finalized. Matt's face reportedly went pale. He stammered. That was a clerical error. Caryn handled the paperwork. Stop, Zach yelled. Stop blaming Caryn for everything. You signed the check. Look at the next page. Zach flipped the document. This is a LLC in Nevada, Roloff Global Strategies. You told us that the company was dissolved 5 years ago. You looked me in the eye, in the barn, when I asked to buy the north side, and you told me you didn't have the liquidity because that company was gone. But here it is, active. And look at the transaction history. Zach ran his finger down a column of numbers. $50,000, $20,000, $10,000. Monthly transfers from the pumpkin patch revenue straight into this account and then straight out to a personal account under Caryn's son's name. You weren't saving money for the farm, Dad. You were skimming the profits. You were stealing from the very business you told me I wasn't competent enough to run. The accusation hung heavy in the room. This wasn't just about bad parenting anymore. This was about fraud. Zach was laying out a case that could not only destroy Matt's reputation, but potentially land him in the cell next to Caryn. Matt tried to rally. He tried to turn to Jeremy, looking for the reasonable brother. Jeremy, Matt pleaded, you understand business. You understand that sometimes you have to move money around to protect assets. This was tax planning. I was doing this to save the farm from taxes so there would be something left for you boys. Jeremy didn't blink. He didn't look at the papers. He looked right at his father's eyes. He didn't join Zach shouting. He remained terrifyingly calm. Tax planning is legal, Dad, Jeremy said, his voice low and steady. Forging our mother's signature is a felony. Funneling pumpkin season cash into a secret account is embezzlement. Do not insult my intelligence by calling this business strategy. This is theft. Zach wasn't done. He pulled out a printed stack of screenshots. These were text messages. The speculation is that Marek, using his network, managed to get hold of data from an old work phone that had been discarded in the farm office, a phone Matt thought was wiped. "And let's talk about the barn," Zach said, his voice shaking with rage now. "Remember when the deal fell through? Remember when you told the world that I demanded too much, that I was being unreasonable? You painted me as a brat." Zach shoved the screenshots toward Matt. "Read it. Read the text you sent to Caryn the night before we were supposed to sign. We need to spike the deal. Zach isn't ready. Make the terms impossible. I want to sell it to the open market, but I need it to look like it's his fault." "You never intended to sell me the farm, Dad. It was all a show for the cameras. You wasted my time, you broke my heart, and you humiliated me on national television, all so you could cash out and run away to Arizona with her." Matt was sweating now. The waiter tried to enter the room to take an order, but one look at the tension made him back out immediately. Matt took a sip of water, his hand shaking visibly. "I was protecting you, Zach," Matt whispered, a weak defense. "You couldn't handle the debt. The farm is a beast. I did it for your own good." "For my own good?" Zach laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You gaslit me for my own good? You let Caryn mock my wife for my own good? You know what Chris found in the emails? Emails between Caryn and her lawyer discussing how to frame Mom for assault if she ever came onto the property unannounced. You were on those chains, Dad. You were CC'd. You saw her planning to have the mother of your children arrested, and you said nothing. You replied with a thumbs-up emoji. This was the breaking point of the first act of this confrontation. The evidence was overwhelming. Zach had successfully dismantled the confused grandfather act. He had proven that Matt wasn't a passive victim of Caryn's scheming, but an active participant. Matt sat slumped in his chair, the weight of the undeniable truth crushing him. He looked small. For years, he had loomed large over his family, the great architect, the visionary. Now, surrounded by printed emails and bank statements, he looked like a common crook. But if Matt thought Zach's emotional explosion was the worst of it, he was wrong. Zach was the storm, beating down the defenses. Jeremy was the sniper waiting in the wings. While Zach was venting the pain of a son betrayed, Jeremy was calculating the cost of the brand. Jeremy hadn't raised his voice yet. He hadn't touched the food. He was just watching, waiting for Matt to run out of excuses. Matt wiped his forehead with a napkin. "Okay," he said, his voice raspy. "Okay. Look, maybe I let things get too complicated. Maybe I trusted Caryn too much. She's very persuasive. You know that. She twisted things. But she's gone now. She's in custody. It's over. We can move past this. We can fix this. I can fire the lawyers. I can..." "You still don't get it," Zach interrupted, leaning back, exhausted. "There is no fixing this with an apology, Dad. We aren't here to hear you say sorry. We're here to tell you how it's going to end." Matt looked between them, confusion clouding his eyes. "What do you mean?" This is where the atmosphere shifted from a family argument to a corporate takeover. Jeremy leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. The warmth was gone from his eyes. "Dad," Jeremy started, "Zach has proven that you are legally compromised. You are a liability. The Roloff name used to mean family, hard work, and overcoming the odds. Now, thanks to you and Caryn, it means fraud, manipulation, and greed. I have spent years building my own brand. Separate from this circus. I will not let you drag me or my wife or my children down with your sinking ship." Matt tried to interject. "Jeremy, I would never..." "Quiet," Jeremy commanded. "It wasn't a request. You are going to listen to me very carefully, because what I am about to propose is the only lifeline you have left. You think you can charm the public? You can't. The evidence Zach has, if we hand this to the district attorney, you aren't just losing the farm. You're losing your freedom. You will die in prison, Dad. That is the reality." Matt stared at him, wide-eyed. The mention of prison coming from his golden boy, seemed to shatter his remaining defenses. We have drawn up a document, Jeremy continued, pulling a sleek stapled contract from his own jacket pocket. This isn't a discussion. This is an ultimatum. You have 3 conditions to meet. If you meet them, we keep this folder closed. We don't go to the press. We don't go to the DA. You get to live out your days in Arizona as the retired grandpa, albeit a lonely one. But if you refuse even one of these terms, we burn it all down. The tension in that room was reportedly suffocating. Matt Roloff, the man who always had the final say, the man who moved dirt mountains and built castles, was now staring at a contract drafted by the sons he thought he could control. He reached for the water glass again, but he didn't drink. He just held it, needing something to anchor him to reality. "What are the terms?" Matt asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jeremy opened the contract to the first page. "Condition 1, he said, his voice echoing with the finality of a judge delivering a sentence. "Total capitulation on the narrative. You will issue a public statement, video and written, approved by us. In this statement, you will admit to financial mismanagement and you will apologize to Mom. By name, you will vindicate her. You will admit that you and Caryn conspired to push her out. No vague language, no mistakes were made. You will take full responsibility." Matt shook his head instinctively. "I can't say I conspired. That's an admission of guilt for the feds." "The feds already have Caryn," Jeremy countered coldly. "They want her. If you give them a public mea culpa that paints her as the mastermind and you as the fool who went along with it, you might save your skin. But more importantly, you will clear Mom's name. That is non-negotiable." "Condition 2, Zach chimed in, finding his second win. "Caryn, she is dead to this family. You will publicly disavow her. You will announce that you are severing all ties, personal and professional. You will cooperate with the prosecution against her. You don't pay her legal bills. You don't visit her. You don't take her calls. You choose. It's your fiancé or your children. You cannot have both." Matt looked like he was being physically struck. Abandoning Caryn, even with her in jail, was his worst nightmare. He was codependent. He relied on her for everything. To cut her off was to cut off his own right arm. But he looked at the folder of evidence under Zach's hand. He knew they had him. "And the third condition?" Matt asked, dreading the answer. Jeremy turned the page of the contract. "The legacy," he said. "The show, the rights, the little people, big world intellectual property. You own the rights to the production company that licenses the family story. You are going to sign those rights over. Not to me, not to Zach. To trust." "A trust?" Matt asked. "A trust managed by the 4 siblings," Jeremy clarified. "Me, Zach, Molly, and Jacob. You are done profiting off our childhoods. You are done profiting off the grandkids. You will sign over the IP rights and the trust will decide the future of the show. If we want to cancel it, we cancel it. If we want to film without you, we film without you. You are fired, Dad. You are fired from being the head of this family." The silence that followed was absolute. The noise of the restaurant outside seemed to fade away. It was just 3 men, a folder of crimes, and a contract that would end an era. Matt Roloff looked at his sons, and for the first time, he didn't see children he could bully. He saw 2 men who had outgrown him, outsmarted him, and overpowered him. He looked down at the contract. The pen lay there, waiting. The waiter, unaware of the destruction happening at table 4, knocked on the door. "Excuse me, gentlemen, are we ready to order?" Jeremy didn't look at the waiter. He kept his eyes on Matt. "We're not hungry," Jeremy said. "We're just waiting for a signature." "This is the cliffhanger, folks." Matt is staring at the paper. He has to choose between his ego, his lover, and his freedom. But what happens next is not the submission the boys expected. Matt Roloff has 1 card left to play. a card so toxic and manipulative that it shocked even the insiders who leaked this story. He doesn't just refuse, he attacks. And what he says about Amy and Chris in the now of this meeting will change everything. The waiter retreated, sensing the radioactive toxicity in the room, leaving the three Roloff men in a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush the table. Matt looked at the contract. He looked at the pen Jeremy had placed with military precision next to the signature line. For a fleeting moment, sources say, he actually looked defeated. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darted around the room as if looking for an exit or a camera crew to yell, "Cut." But there were no cameras, there was no producer to step in and mediate. It was just the reality of his own making. And that is when the transformation happened. That is when the confused elderly grandfather mask slipped off. And the true Matt Roloff, the man who bulldozed his way through life, consequences be damned, emerged. He didn't pick up the pen. He picked up the contract, looked at the terms one last time, public confession, disavowing Caryn, surrendering the rights, and he laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a dry, incredulous, condescending chuckle. He tossed the papers back onto the table, scattering the photos of the forged documents Zach had laid out earlier. "You boys," Matt said, shaking his head, a smirk creeping onto his face. "You really think you can come in here, into my world, and give me an ultimatum? You think you can fire me from my own life? I built you. I built this family. I built the very platform you're standing on to judge me." Jeremy didn't flinch. "We are judging you, Dad. The federal government is judging Caryn. The forensic accountants are judging the books. We are just giving you a lifeboat. Sign the paper." "I'm not signing a damn thing," Matt snapped, his voice rising, drawing glances from the main dining room through the frosted glass. "You think I'm gonna let you two steal my legacy because of some clerical errors and a witch hunt against Caryn? You have no idea what you're talking about. You sit there with your evidence from Chris Marek. Chris, you're trusting the guy who swooped in to take my place? The guy who is living in my house, sleeping in my bed? You think he's a hero?" This was the pivot. Insiders describe this moment as Matt's narcissistic collapse. When cornered with undeniable facts, he didn't address the facts. He attacked the source. He couldn't defend the forgery, so he attacked the messenger. "Chris is the one playing you," Matt hissed, leaning over the table, his face turning red. "Chris has been trying to get his hands on the farm assets since the day he met your mother. You think this folder is about justice? It's a hit job. He cooked this up to get you two on his side so he can push me out completely and take over the development rights. And you fell for it. My own sons, brainwashed by the hired help and your bitter mother." Zach slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "Don't you dare talk about Mom like that. She has nothing to do with you stealing pumpkin money. She has nothing to do with you texting Caryn about framing her." "She has everything to do with it," Matt yelled back, abandoning all pretense of a peaceful meeting. "Your mother never understood business. She never understood the pressure I was under to keep this family afloat. I forged that signature? No, I was moving assets to protect them from the IRS because your mother's mismanagement was going to bankrupt us. I was saving the farm from her, and Caryn was the only one who helped me. She was the only one who stood by me while Amy was nagging me to death, and you kids were ungrateful brats demanding handouts." The air left the room. Matt had finally said the quiet part out loud. For years, viewers suspected that Matt viewed his family not as loved ones, but as employees or obstacles. Now, he was confirming it. He didn't see himself as a criminal. He saw himself as a martyr. Jeremy looked at Zach. A look passed between the brothers. A look of profound, heartbreaking clarity. They realized at that moment that there was no peace summit. There was no version of this where Matt apologized. He was incapable of it. Even with Caryn in jail and the evidence on the table, he was rewriting history in real time to make himself the hero. So that's it then, Jeremy said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. It's everyone else's fault. Mom's fault. Chris's fault. The IRS. Me, Zach, everyone except Matt Roloff. I am the victim here, Matt insisted, his eyes wide and frantic. I have given you everything. The houses, the weddings, the fame. And this is how you repay me? By blackmails? By telling me to abandon the woman I love when she's down? I will never disavow Caryn. She is 10 times the partner your mother ever was. She understands loyalty, unlike you. The insult hung in the air. Matt had chosen. He chose the woman who was currently sitting in a holding cell over the son sitting in front of him. He chose his ego over his grandchildren. Zach stood up first. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked done. He looked like a man who had been carrying a heavy weight for 30 years and had finally decided to drop it. He began gathering the papers, the evidence, the photos, the bank statements. He put them back into the folder with slow, deliberate movements. You're right, Dad, Zach said softly. We aren't loyal. Not to this version of you. I came here today hoping, I don't know what I was hoping for, maybe that I'd see a glimpse of the dad who used to take us camping, the dad who built the swamp fort, but that guy is dead, isn't he? He died a long time ago. All that's left is the CEO. I am doing this for you, Matt pleaded, but the desperation in his voice sounded hollow. Zach, sit down. We can work something out. We can structure a deal where I keep the rights but pay you a consultation fee. We can... No, Zach said. He zipped up his bag. There is no deal. There is no negotiation. You made your choice. You chose Caryn and the lies. So you get to keep them. But you don't get us. You don't get Jackson. You don't get Lila. You don't get Josiah. Matt froze. You can't do that. You can't keep my grandkids from me. That's cruel. That's Amy talking. That is a father protecting his children from a toxic influence, Zach replied. I won't let them be used as props for your redemption tour. I won't let you manipulate them the way you manipulated us. Jeremy stood up next. He picked up the unsigned contract, the peace treaty that Matt had rejected. He held it up for a second, then slowly tore it in half. The sound of the ripping paper was the only sound in the room. He dropped the pieces onto Matt's empty plate. The brand is dead, Matt, Jeremy said, dropping the dad title entirely. You're worried about your legacy? This is it. You're going to be the lonely old man in the big house who sold his family for a quick buck and a girlfriend who used him. When the news breaks about Caryn, and it will break because we aren't protecting you anymore, don't call us. Don't call Audrey. Don't call Mom. You are on your own. Matt sat there, stunned. He tried to speak, to formulate another argument, another spin, but the boys were already moving. They didn't look back. They didn't hesitate. They walked toward the door of the private room with a synchronized resolve. Boys, wait, Matt called out, half rising from his chair. You're making a mistake. You need me. The show is nothing without me. You'll come crawling back when the checks stop clearing. Zach opened the door. The sounds of the restaurant, clinking glasses, laughter, life, rushed in, a stark contrast to the tomb they were leaving. He turned one last time, his hand on the knob. We aren't coming back, Dad, Zach said. And for the record, Mom is happy. She doesn't talk about you. She doesn't think about you. She's free, and now so are we. The door clicked shut. Inside the room, the silence returned, heavier than before. Matt Roloff stood alone. The folder of evidence was gone, but the truth of it remained. The torn contract lay on the table like a corpse. 3 plates of food, untouched and cold, sat as a testament to the wasted opportunity. Witnesses say Matt stood there for a full minute, staring at the closed door, waiting for them to come back. He waited for the scene to end. He waited for the producer to say, okay, good take, now let's do the reconciliation. But there was no producer. The script had run out. Matt slowly sank back into his chair. He pulled his phone out. His thumb hovered over Caryn's contact, but he remembered she couldn't answer. He scrolled to his lawyer's number. He hesitated. Then he put the phone down. For the first time in decades, the man who always had a plan, always had an angle, and always had the last word had absolutely nothing. He poured a glass of wine, his hand shaking so badly that red liquid splashed onto the white tablecloth, spreading like a stain. He stared at it, paralyzed. The patriarch was dethroned. The Roloff Farms dynasty had officially ended, not with a bang, but with a walkout. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, the scene was entirely different. Paparazzi, who had been tipped off about the secret summit, likely by Matt's own PR team, hoping for a reconciliation photo, caught the exit. They didn't get the shot Matt wanted. They got a shot of Zach and Jeremy embracing by their trucks. It wasn't a staged hug for TLC. It was a hug of survival. Sources say Jeremy was heard saying, "It's done. We did it." Zach looked visibly shaken, wiping his eyes, but he nodded. They didn't go to a bar. They didn't go to the farm. They got in their separate cars and drove to Amy's house. This is the turning point that changes the entire trajectory of the show and the family. By going to Amy's immediately after the confrontation, the boys solidified the new alliance. The Team Amy faction is no longer just a fan theory. It is the new reality of the Roloff family structure. Matt is isolated on an island of his own making. But here is where the story gets even darker. We have received reports from a source close to the production team that Matt didn't leave the restaurant for another 2 hours. He reportedly ordered more drinks, sitting alone in the private room, muttering to himself. When the manager finally asked him to settle the bill, Matt allegedly made a scene, shouting, "Do you know who I am? I made this town famous." It was a pathetic display of a man whose identity is crumbling. The fallout from this meeting was immediate. The next morning, block numbers were confirmed. Insiders tell us that Matt tried to FaceTime Jackson for a good morning call, as was his custom, only to find the call failing instantly. He tried Jeremy, straight to voicemail. He tried Audrey, blocked. He even tried reaching out to Jacob, the youngest, hoping to find a weak link. Jacob, who has been distancing himself for years, reportedly sent a single text back, "Don't." The wall has gone up. And now Matt is cornered. With Caryn facing federal charges and his family severing ties, he is a wounded animal. And wounded animals are dangerous. We are hearing rumors that Matt is planning a scorched earth retaliation. If he can't have the family, he's going to destroy the reputation of everyone who left him. We are talking about leaked audio tapes of Amy, non-disclosure agreements being weaponized, and a potential lawsuit against his own sons for defamation regarding the accusations they made in that restaurant. The Peace Summit didn't bring peace. It brought war. A civil war within the Roloff family that will likely play out in the tabloids and the courtrooms rather than on TLC. The network is reportedly in a panic. They have footage for a new season, but the narrative they were building about the happy grandfather, the farm transition, is now completely false. They are sitting on a lie. And Zach and Jeremy just handed them the scissors to cut the cord. So where does this leave us? We are witnessing the final act of a tragedy. Matt Roloff thought he was the protagonist of Little People, Big World. He thought he was the hero of the story. But in one afternoon, he was revealed to be the villain. He lost the plot, he lost the cast, and he lost the audience. This leads us to the most terrifying question of all. What will Caryn do when she finds out? She is sitting in a cell expecting Matt to fix this, expecting Matt to charm the boys and secure the funds for her defense. When she learns that Matt failed, that the boys know about the forgery, and that the money pipeline has been shut off, will she turn on him? Will she cut a deal? Legal experts we've consulted believe that Caryn Chandler's best move now is to flip. If Zach and Jeremy hand that folder of evidence to the authorities and all signs point to them doing exactly that, Matt is the bigger fish. Caryn could trade her silence for a reduced sentence, testifying that she was merely following the orders of a controlling, manipulative boss. Matt Roloff could be looking at an indictment with his own fiancée as the star witness against him. The meeting at the restaurant wasn't just a breakup, it was the beginning of the end of Matt Roloff as a free man. The restaurant meeting was about the earthquake, but the tsunami is still coming. While Matt Roloff sat alone in that steakhouse, drowning his sorrows in expensive wine and denial, the gears of a much larger, colder machine were already turning. We have to look at the other side of this equation, Caryn Chandler. Right now, according to reports, she is sitting in a federal holding facility, waiting for her knight in shining armor to come save her. She is waiting for Matt to liquidate assets, pull strings, and hire the best defense team money can buy. She is operating on the belief that the Roloff empire is still intact. But she doesn't know what happened in that private room. She doesn't know that Zach and Jeremy just torched the empire. When Caryn finds out that Matt has been cut off, that the boys have blocked him, that the show's future is in jeopardy, and most importantly, that the cash flow required to fight a federal fraud case has just dried up. The dynamic changes instantly. This is the prisoner's dilemma played out in real life. Legal analysts we've spoken to are predicting a pivot that will make the restaurant confrontation look like a playground fight. Caryn isn't going to go down with the ship. She is a survivor. She latched on to Matt when he was the big boss, and mark my words, she will detach herself the moment he becomes a liability. We are already hearing whispers from sources near the investigation that Caryn's legal counsel is exploring a plea deal. And what is the only currency Caryn has to trade for her freedom? Matt Roloff. She knows where the bodies are buried. She knows about the undisclosed assets. She knows about the handshake deals behind the scenes of the pumpkin patch. If the boys hand over their folder of evidence to the authorities, it creates a roadmap. But Caryn can provide the guided tour. The speculation is that within 48 hours of learning about the failed peace summit, Caryn will turn state's witness. Matt Roloff won't just be fighting the IRS or his sons, he will be fighting the woman he destroyed his family for. This brings us to the future of the farm. The property that started it all, the dirt that Matt worshipped more than his own marriage, is now at serious risk. If the allegations of fraud and embezzlement that Zach leveled against his father are proven true, the farm isn't just a piece of real estate anymore. It's a frozen asset. We could see federal liens placed on the property. We could see the big house seized to pay back restitution. Imagine the irony. Matt spent decades trying to control who would inherit the farm, pitting twin against twin, only to potentially lose it to the government because of his own greed. The legacy he was so obsessed with building is crumbling into dust. And what about TLC? What about the network that has documented this family's life for nearly 2 decades? They are in a panic room right now. The narrative they have sold us, the wholesome, albeit dysfunctional farm life, is dead. You cannot edit around federal indictments. You cannot put a folk guitar soundtrack over a family completely severing ties. But here is the dark truth about reality TV. Controversy sells. There is a strong theory circulating that TLC might not cancel the show. Instead, they might rebrand it. Imagine a season focused entirely on the fallout. Little People, Big World, The Trial. Or, even more likely, they might finally give the audience what they have been asking for, a show that cuts Matt out entirely. Picture a spinoff centered on Amy, Chris, and the kids, titled Roloff Redemption. A show about healing, about the cousins growing up together, away from the toxicity of the farm, with Matt only existing as a cautionary tale mentioned in hushed tones. The network knows that Matt is now the villain, And in the world of entertainment, villains eventually get written out. Matt Roloff is facing a future of absolute isolation. He will be sitting in that massive house in Arizona, surrounded by his cactus collections and his ego, with no one to call. No Caryn, no Zach, no Jeremy, no grandkids running through the halls. Just the silence of a man who won every argument but lost the war. He prioritized the deal over the relationship every single time. He treated his sons like employees and his ex-wife like a competitor. Now, he has no employees, no competitors, and no family. He has achieved total control, but he is the king of an empty kingdom. The most tragic part of this entire saga is that it didn't have to end this way. If Matt had just walked into that restaurant with humility instead of a contract, if he had admitted his faults instead of blaming everyone else, there might have been a sliver of hope. The boys wanted a father. They gave him one last chance to be a dad instead of a boss. But Matt Roloff doesn't know how to be a dad without being a boss. He chose the role he was most comfortable with, and it cost him everything. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to look at the photos of the grandkids that Matt used to post so proudly. Look at the smiles of Jackson and Ember, and realize that those photos are now relics of the past. Unless a miracle happens, unless Matt undergoes a fundamental personality change that seems impossible at his age, he will likely never see them again. The line has been drawn. The ultimatum was delivered. And the answer was a resounding no. So I have to ask you, the viewer, whose side are you on? Did Zach and Jeremy go too far with their ultimatum? Is it cruel to cut a grandfather out of his grandchildren's lives? Or is it the only way to protect them from a narcissist? And what do you think Caryn will do? Will she stay loyal and go to prison? Or will she flip on Matt to save herself? I want to see your theories in the comments below. Team boys, Team Matt, or Team shut it all down? Let me know. And listen, we are currently verifying a new lead. We have received word that there is audio recording of the conversation in the parking lot between Jeremy and a producer who tried to stop them from leaving. If we can authenticate that audio, you will hear it here first. We are also digging into the public records regarding Nevada LLC Zach mentioned. We are going to expose every dollar, every text message, and every secret this family has tried to hide. If you want to be part of the investigation, if you want the truth that TLC refuses to air, you need to subscribe right now. Hit the bell notification so you are the first to know when the next bombshell drops. The show might be ending, but the real story is just beginning. Stay tuned.